And
It's a good try.
good morning, Melissa. How are you?
Good morning, Leslie. I am awesome. How are you?
Great. Even with this like cloudy day, I feel like our monthly live stream, it's just something to keep on looking forward to. And it comes back so fast. I don't know where the last month went.
I know. I agree. I feel like July never happened.
Yeah. And now, I mean, we're closer to Labor Day than we are to like Memorial Day. Oh, Shelby's here already. Let me start. So people, we now know we're connected.
It worked.
Welcome, Shelby. Hello, Heather. Evan from Jersey City. It's great to see you. And Leah from Milwaukee. We're so glad you're here. I'm also going to put up the banner so people know we want to know where you're calling in from. Well, someone out there, it's all popping in. Hello, Tanya. It's great to see you.
She's
And good
like,
morning, G from Texas. And I want to mention it just struck me. I know there's always people from all different places, but last month we definitely spanned the globe. We had someone from Indonesia here, Albert was here, and then we also had Gary from Hawaii, and we had everything in between Europe, Asia, South America, of course, the United States. It was
well,
amazing. And look at what we've got now.
some
Now we're
interesting places here. Yes, Dubai, amazing. And
welcome.
Lincoln is in the UK? Question mark. He's gonna scold me that I don't remember for certain. Is he in Lincoln? Are you in the UK? If you can hear me, put your location in there.
Oh,
Long
good morning, Shailene. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Jada.
Jada. Yay.
That's
Oh, we're
right.
so glad
Jada's
you're
in
here.
Jamaica. Jada's in Jamaica. We are I got it right. Thank goodness. Okay, Lincoln's in the UK. Good. I didn't get it wrong.
Um, oh, I've got to figure out LinkedIn. I know a lot of people from Long Beach, New York. So LinkedIn user, I'm not even going to begin to guess. We'll see who you are when I get back on LinkedIn. And hello, Lincoln. We're so glad you're here from the UK.
Oh, and my friend Amy Clark is here. Oh, this is so nice.
Hello, Todd. Todd Petty's here from Atlanta. Oh, and someone I haven't seen, Karen will probably tell me, when's the last time we saw each other? It's been a couple of decades. Thank you for being here, Karen. And Kenneth Lang, right from Wayne, New Jersey. Oh, this is so, I love this. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from, and it's all popping through. If I missed anyone, I did miss saying good morning to Amy Clark. Hello, Amy. And if I missed anyone, you know I'm going to catch you later on. So thank you all for being here. Decades, yes. We won't say how many decades, Karen. Love it. So it's about that time. We want to thank you for joining us. Welcome to our new viewers, our returning viewers. We appreciate all of you, and I know that many more are going to start popping in. This is Let's Talk About It, Careers, Business, and LinkedIn. Today's episode 11. Have you had your business etiquette training? And we're going to get into that. Before we do, let's start with introducing ourselves. And I know I didn't even check to see which mug. Do you have your monster mug there? Yes, she does.
I always go the wrong way in the camera. Yep, my monster.
There it is.
Because there's
I
never
love that.
the more the merrier.
Never enough.
Go big or go home.
And if you would introduce yourself.
Absolutely. I am Melissa Cohen. I am affectionately known as the Good Witch of LinkedIn because I do absolutely love LinkedIn, and I try to show everyone what a magical place it is. I am here in New York City with Leslie, and I'm super happy to see everyone.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad you're here. We're so lucky that we're not even, in the same place, but we're in the same city. So I'm Leslie Nydick. Uh, Conflict happens, as many of us know, and that's why I do what I do. I like to help people get unstuck from conflict. I do it through being on LinkedIn and sharing strategies. I also have a micro blog called The Strats. I'm on YouTube. And then I want to mention something new. I know I might be late to the game, and maybe some aren't even there yet, but I just got on Instagram,
Oh,
literally. So,
nice.
if you're on Instagram, come find me because I'll start going out and looking for people. At Not a Surprise at the Conflict Strategist, and I'd love to see you on Instagram. So, oh, before I move forward, let's see. There's a few more that came through. Hello, Karen. Great to see you. And where are you calling in from? Because I can't remember. Evan. Yes, I need to. We need to get a thing where we all show off our mugs. We might announce that ahead of an event next time where everyone can show their pictures. So we are not surprised. We have a question for all of you. So, as per Resume Builder, more than, and I'm emphasizing that, half of US companies are forcing their employees to attend etiquette classes to remind them how to dress, how to act in the office, in real life, as well as in the virtual workplace. So what we want to know, have you had to attend etiquette training? We want to do our own survey or poll and figure out the results here. How about you, Melissa? I just think of you've been in the fashion industry. I mean, you clearly know about fashion and you always show off great fashion. Have you ever had to attend anything like an etiquette training for what to wear?
I would say no. I would say there has never been, when I was in the corporate world, a formal etiquette training. I do know and I remember there have been times when conversations needed to be had with either individual employees or perhaps a specific group of employees. What they wore to the office was definitely interesting, right? Because fashion is a little bit more creative. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say anything goes, because of course it's not anything goes, but obviously what you could wear to a corporate office in the fashion industry differed a lot from what might be considered acceptable if you worked in, say, finance, right? Very different. And I think we've all heard those horror stories of those sort of Devil Wears Prada offices where, if you weren't wearing something incredibly stylish and up to date, you would get mocked or you would get snickered at. I never had that experience. I never worked for a company where there was that sort of meanness around what people wore. I think the biggest challenge from that standpoint was if you were not necessarily in a customer facing role, but you were still visible to customers and clients coming in, were you still dressed in a way that was business appropriate?
Yeah.
And that was always a conversation.
Wow. We're getting, I haven't seen a yes yet, which is interesting because to see a survey that says more than 50% of the companies, we have Bruce, another person from New York City joining us. It's great to see you, Bruce. And let's see what Lincoln has to say. The best business etiquette training is found on the job in a practical environment, and it's generally vertical dependent. Outstanding point. I agree. Oh, and Deborah, welcome. Many times they would not call out one person, they would make it a policy so it would affect everyone. Yep, I've seen that before when they saw trends happening, then all of a sudden we'd all get that memo of like, there's been something added to the employee handbook. So
Yes.
interesting. I would say then that whichever the companies were that Resume Builder interviewed or surveyed, they weren't necessarily the companies that any of us
That
worked
we
at
worked
because we
for.
didn't. Um, oh, Sia, welcome. We're glad you're here. So on our survey, I would say at the moment when I'm glancing through all the responses, we're at 0%. So I'm going to have to do a little more research to find out who some of those employers are, for sure. So next up, we are going to now get into the conversation why we're here today. So I wanted to start with, let's talk about the etiquette we've observed and specifically the odd ones. However you want to define odd, Melissa. Do you have any stories to share?
I do, and I think this is probably something that a lot of people will relate to, that probably has happened in a lot of people's offices, and that was people's food being eaten from the office fridge, which to me is just the oddest thing ever, and yet it seemed to happen on a perpetual basis. I was constantly hearing, and in some cases dealing with, people complaining that they put food in the refrigerator to have for lunch, and when lunchtime came, they went to the fridge and it was gone. And I just think that that's such a strange thing to do, to eat your coworker's food. And even when people would label it with their name, sometimes it didn't even solve the problem. So I think that was definitely an unusual one.
Absolutely. And you know what? We don't share the stories ahead of time. Oh my, I was actually called into a workplace to manage the conflict that was in the refrigerator. Because not only were there notes on like this is mine, don't eat it, the arguments were getting like tense.
Yes.
People would be like, if you eat this one more time, I'm gonna do this. And there'd be these back and forth notes. I mean, we finally came to the conclusion that that's not the best way to communicate with these post-its on the food, but it's definitely a source of conflict, not just a source of being
Did,
odd.
did they actually know who was doing the eating?
There was accusations, not always correct accusations.
Right.
Um, but because sometimes it was people from other floors would come in because they heard there was good food
Oh
on
my
that floor.
goodness.
So it just became, but the notes, everyone knew who was writing the notes by the handwriting and things like that. Even though no one signed anything, it was very passive aggressive. So it was huge source of conflict. And of course, there really were other layers of conflict, and this is just how they let out their anger is what it became. But it almost became funny at one point. I did get them to laugh like in reflection, but not while they were talking about it. It was
You
serious.
actually reminded me of sort of like another iteration of this conflict when you said like people from other floors would come because they heard there was good food. So a lot of times we would have catered breakfasts or catered lunches for market weeks, or, because buyers were coming in. And so oftentimes whatever was left over, we would put out into the kitchen, for everybody to enjoy. But sometimes people would just take it upon themselves to, go into these conference rooms or into the showrooms and start helping themselves. And it was like, no, it's not ready for everybody to start digging into yet. And that
Yeah.
definitely would upset people, because if you didn't have enough food for the people who were coming in for market week, that was a huge problem. Food is a really big
Yeah.
one, right? A really big
Food is big. I kept on thinking about like my odd stories or the way people dressed. One of my jobs, I used to go to a lot of different regions, a lot of different offices, and not shock, but it was surprising how different, like what's acceptable in different regions. And it's almost like they created their own culture. I could tell you in one office, I'd walk in there and it felt like everyone had just come from the gym. Um, and it reminded me of the headline that caught my attention that even brought up this topic was that it said, it's like they rolled out of bed. And it really did. Um, my second story is a little bit about where people will show up, especially virtually. So many of you know I teach at NYU, and right now one of my courses is all virtual. And people will show up from all kinds of locations, sometimes where they're working, they're just staying late at work for the class, sometimes in a crowded coffee shop. And that ended up being genius because there was this one student, his broadband at home was not very reliable. So he decided to go to Dunkin' Donuts and so he wouldn't miss class. So I loved that. However, in that same class, we had the student who was lying in bed, not sick, not anything like that. And, you had every iteration. Then there were the people who sit in the kitchen. Nothing wrong with the kitchen, but maybe you shouldn't have the pile of dirty dishes like right next to your head. So it wasn't, I didn't disapprove. But it says something about not planning, like, and thinking about what your background is. Hey, blur it out. I might have been able to figure out it was dishes, but it wouldn't have been as distracting.
100%. That's what I was thinking the whole time. I was like, there is this really neat feature called blur. If you don't want to use a virtual background, just that little blur button is super helpful. I have to tell you, I am in love with this comment section. I'm trying super hard not to laugh. We've got a comment about someone scooping potato salad with their hands.
Oh my God, I'll have to get to that one. I'm doing them in order. We have something here about infotech people are assumed not to do this because they're not client facing. Yes, that's also a factor. People think if you're not client facing, but you're colleague facing, like we're still all together. I'm gonna get, oh yes, why it's okay to steal food. I have no idea. They won't steal the valuable stuff off a desk, but they'll steal the food from the refrigerator. Shelby's laughing. Love it. And thank you for joining, Shelby. What else do we have here? Thank you, Heather. And David, I knew someone who was fired from stealing their coworkers' food. Wow, that's the first time I ever heard that. So it is a crime to steal food.
Yeah.
Co-working space. Oh, I didn't even think of that. And then that's different because not everyone, in a workplace, we're working together, seemingly for more than days at a time, possibly months and years, but a co-working space, the people are always changing, so you don't even feel loyalty to someone. Interesting. Now, I've got to get to some of these others. Never even what possessed people to simply steal each other's food. This is becoming, and Shelby named it the refrigerator conflict for sure.
You can do a whole course, Leslie, around conflict resolution in the fridge.
I think so. Oh, I love Heather's solution. She brought her own small cooler so she didn't have to put her stuff in the fridge.
That is brilliant.
And here, oh, Deborah's here. It is. It's a lack of respect. And that's really why it turned into real conflict with the clients I was working with. Sounds like high school. Yep. Maybe even elementary school. But I don't remember anyone stealing my food in elementary school. We liked sharing it.
Yeah, it was all about trading. Exactly.
I love what Sia said, hands off my food, people, and make sure to put that on a Post-it on the food. We have a few more. Oh, I know Lauren had a great odd story, but I can't recall at the moment in the comments of our post. but she commented on our food, but there's a lot of conflict around leaving food in the fridge too long and also dirty dishes and no one ever cleaning out the fridge, right? They
Yes.
leave the yogurt or the milk there for weeks and it's like, is anyone going to pick it up and throw it out?
At one company I was with, that's what we actually had to do. We made an Excel spreadsheet and we assigned every week a different person. It was your job to clean out the fridge and throw away everything that was outdated. And the rule was, if you want to keep it, put your name on it. If it doesn't have a name on it, we're throwing it out. And somebody had to do that every week because you're right, nobody wanted to do it.
Yeah. And Gary makes a good point. The food is a personal space. It was like the only thing you knew was just personally yours because the stapler really wasn't yours. You know, the other desk stuff you have, it's yours, but not yours. But the food you brought from home. Great point. And now I worked on a
It
trading.
is.
Yes, I can imagine. I worked on Wall Street, not on the trading floor, but I often had to stop at the trading floor. So I can imagine what would go on there. Oh, thank you for all these great comments.
We have a lot of work to do after this, Leslie. We have a lot of things to respond to.
Absolutely. Oh, and Dave brought, I work in a family office. I could wear whatever I want. Well, I would say we can all wear whatever we want. Uh, but do we try to conform to some kind of culture or rules? And we're going to have some stories about that in the moment. So I'm going to get to that. So our next question is, so we want to share some best tips. And I think some of you have shared the best tips, or we just know to do the opposite of what we've been talking about. I know Melissa has some wisdom, particularly as it relates to the virtual workplace.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about it, right? Be cognizant of what's in your background, and there are really great tools that Zoom and Google Meet, and I think Teams, virtually any of these conferencing applications, they all have some form of blur your background or putting a virtual background. I don't personally love the virtual backgrounds because you anytime you move, it looks a little bit odd. If people are walking in the background, it can look a little odd. So Lincoln's comment is going to be something I speak to in a minute. But if you're in a space that is less than professional, I think it's great to have those options, right? And I think we have to all come from a place of empathy that not everyone has a big house with an extra bedroom that can be used as an office. And,
Sure.
we need to, what's the word I'm looking for? We need to kind of do things on the fly sometimes. And so just use those tools, right? Use that blur, use that background. I love what Lincoln said. And I think that's something that we as attendees to virtual meetings have to sort of normalize. Life happens, right? If someone's animal, pet or someone's child comes into the call, that's okay. Like that's life, right? We're working from home, things are going to happen. I think it's much better to be like, oh, hey, here's my crazy cat, and like show the cat to everyone for a minute, lightens the mood, and then the cat goes away, than, being all anxious about it and trying to pretend the cat's not there, and then the cat wants to stay because it wants attention. I think we just have to
Sure.
normalize some of this, that this is real life, and the lines between home and office have blurred a bit because of so much remote and hybrid work.
Absolutely. And I still think of it was mentioned before something about the trading floor, and it brought up an old memory of being called into HR. I worked on Wall Street, and this is probably the reason why I go much more formal. I'd rather err on the side of being too formal than being less formal because this was before the days of business casual. So we already were pretty formal, but I was called into HR because I wasn't dressing formal enough that day, that one day.
Of course.
So it was much more strict. That's why it's funny that it's coming back full circle, like this whole etiquette training.
Well, I think that that's a big risk with virtual, right? We kind of forget.
Yes.
If you're not wearing pants, don't stand up on your Zoom call. We kind of forget these things sometimes.
And we all know that's happened to some people.
Exactly.
And I think you're bringing up all the other good points. Also, like Zoom, you mentioned the backgrounds. So think about, like, show up to a virtual workplace a few minutes early so you can test your camera, you can test your sound, make sure that if there are other people working around you, which is possible at home or if you're working in a co-working space, make sure that your setting is so that that sound is not picked up, and just add a light if you need to. Just look at yourself before you show up, just like we might look in the mirror before we run into a meeting. Just look and check it out, because you want to show up as your best self. And but then give yourself grace, because Melissa mentioned it. I mean, things go wrong, especially with technical, and maybe there's too many people in your home or the co-working space using the Wi-Fi, so things go out. That's okay. Go with it. Those things happen in a meeting. It doesn't have to be perfect, but still think about how you're showing up.
I think that the statement you made, Leslie, about testing your mic and your camera is so important. And I know for me personally, if I'm working with different clients and they use different applications, like I might have a Zoom call and then a Google Meet and then another Zoom call, a lot of times Zoom especially will get kind of upset that, I cheated on Zoom and I went to a different platform and it will just not work, right? It worked fine for the first call. And then that next call, it's like, oh, no, you used Google Meet. I know you did. I'm not going to find your camera for you. You're going to have to reboot. And so a big tip for me is whenever it's possible, and it's just good for your mental health anyway, but if you can have like a 15-minute buffer in between meetings so that you can have a glass of water, take a deep breath, do a stretch or two, and also check that you're all set up for your next call. That's been a really big difference maker for me.
Absolutely. And it seems like we've got some tips in the comments. If I can fix I see things happen.
Yep.
It reminds me of, and I don't think I've ever told this story here, that I was, after like 20 years of teaching like a course or two a year at NYU, apparently I was supposed to be observed in the early years and no one ever did. And they decided that during the pandemic was the time that I should get observed. No problem. I knew the person, it was set up ahead of time. And I was in the middle of doing an activity with the group, and my computer went dark, completely dark. I couldn't see them. Now, oddly and coincidentally, and maybe just it was meant to be, it was during a body language, section. So I just kept on going. I said, oh, listen, right now I can't see any of you, so you have to describe to me what's going on. And later on in the review from the instructor who was reviewing me, she's like, that was the most brilliant exercise I've ever seen. She's like, why are you laughing? It was all by accident. So I just say, as prepared as we come, just still be yourself, like be comfortable. It can be a little nerve-wracking to be on Zoom and Teams and all of that, because we're looking at ourselves much more and we're seeing ourselves. I know that that's a tip. Some people, they look at themselves, check that the background is good, that you're positioned well, and then you remove yourself so you don't have to see it. I'm going to get to, so, oops, sorry, that went away. Lighting matters. First of all, Sia is the person who taught me what to check, to get the microphone, the camera, the light, the whole bit, and the earphones. And you don't have to spend a lot to do it. It makes a big difference. So I think it's distracting to see the ghost shadow. Blur is better if you're not able to change the background. Absolutely. And then, sorry, some of these aren't coming up. I'm hitting the. It injects the human element, which is sometimes surely missing. Absolutely. And I had different ones. They're all popping around. Sorry.
This is a big one.
Ah, yes. Oh, thank you for bringing that up, Deborah. I've actually felt this.
Yep. I actually find being on Zoom calls all day more tiring than being in person all day. It's very real. You have to take a little bit of a break in between.
And sorry, I'm having a difficult time managing the comments. Here it goes. Ooh, one virtual background was a combination of Star Trek and Millennium Falcon. Very distracting and unnecessary. Absolutely. Yes, I've had people like they do the backgrounds. There might be logos and stuff. And then you know how I might have said this already. Like every time they move their head, their ear disappears. It can be very distracting. And it can, I think it's gotten better, but it can eat up a lot of the broadband where then the voice goes out. They keep on going out and they freeze. I love this comment too. Thank you, Sia. Animals and babies are always acceptable in meetings and podcasts and BBC live streams.
That was a famous one. Yes, the BBC reporter with the baby coming in. It was adorable.
Yes. My pets are always welcome for a call on a minute. Yes. And then, and listen, I've had it, I announce like at the beginning, there's a rule in our NYU classes, like no one else can be in the room when we're in a course because only registered students can be on. But you know what? It's Melissa, it's like what you said. People don't necessarily have a separate room,
Yeah.
an office space where they can close the door. So the children, the family, the aunts, the uncles, the dogs, the cats, they've all been visiting with us. And we just take a moment. It gives a momentary break as well.
Absolutely.
So you know what I've done? And I'm usually much better at this. I
You've
wasn't
gone 2
watching the
minutes
clock.
over.
We've always stuck to the 30 minutes,
It's
and we're
okay.
now officially at 32. So thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. This monthly event is all about conversations between Melissa and me and you. We love the comments. We're going to be in those comments. And we want to continue the conversation about this topic and any topics. It's great networking. So I will tell you, September 13th, mark your calendar. Yes, it is Friday the 13th for our next show. So mark it, we'll get invitations out. But before we fully sign off, Melissa, any closing words?
I think this was such a great conversation. I'm still reading the comments. There's a great one from Sia about closing your tabs. And then someone asking a question about how do we feel about participants turning off their cameras. We will answer all of these questions in the comments after the event because I think they're phenomenal. So just want to say thank you guys all for joining Leslie and me. I look forward to these every month. And these are only good because you guys all show up and ask such great questions. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.